The militant group Al-Shabaab has called the mall attack retribution for Kenyan forces' 2011 push into neighboring Somalia.
And here to discuss the attacks is former White House aide Didi Benke, Dr. Stephen Bronner, political science professor at Rutgers University and director of global relations at the Center for the Study of Genocide. And we are also joined by Dr. Bart Rossi. Thank you so much for being here. Well, it's just so agonizing to see this. The Red Cross says 61 people are still missing. The one question that we want to start with is, how could an attack like this have escaped FBI and other intelligence officials and escalated to this? It was believed to be planned for 1 year. Didi?
Well, you know, the Kenyan officials are actually being scrutinized and criticized because apparently there was some intelligence and they didn't take heed, they didn't pay attention. So, you know, I think as far as the American interest in it, you know, we do have recruits from America in the Minnesota area for Al-Shabaab, Somali Americans. So that's why I think the FBI and American officials are over there checking out for forensics and to find out more. But it sounds like that the Kenyan government really should have paid attention to some of the warnings, and they didn't.
I want to talk about Al-Shabaab, and Dr. Bronner, if you can give us a little background on this terror group.
Well, Al-Shabaab is literally means the boys, young boys.
Figures.
Yeah. No, but they want girls. Now that's the new move, and it's a multi-ethnic group. It's transnational. Its branches are in Sudan, Yemen, and any other, and quite a number of other countries, Somalia, of course, and that's really where they.
Well, I'm going to talk about Somalia because
they're very close to Al Qaeda.
Well, I want to talk about Somalia because Al-Shabaab has said that the Kenyan intervention in Somalia actually triggered this. And Didi, you're shaking your head on this.
Yeah, it is retribution. That's what it is. But they had these reports, and you know they were waiting. And unfortunately, a mall. I mean, that's exactly where they're going to want to hit because that's where people shop, and it's Nike, and it's a lot of you know, Western world type of things, and people drink there. And it's just a part of society that they don't like. So it was a place to attack. It was a soft spot.
And of course, there's a lot of talk that maybe some British, and as you alluded to, Didi, that there were some folks over in Minnesota, but there are discussions that there could be some British and even American folks that were involved in this, and even the White Widow they were talking about.
Yeah.
Dr. Bronner, take that.
Right. Well, I think that I think Didi's right. There's a symbolic quality to all these kind of terror attacks. That goes back to the beginning of the use of terror, the propaganda of the deed, which was an old anarchist idea. Blow something up, show that there's action, and you wait for the explosion among the masses. And the mall is, in a certain way, is the quintessential symbol of Western consumerism.
But these people don't like.
Which they don't like. In the same way that that Osama bin Laden attacked the World Trade Center because it was a symbol of American capitalism.
Well, I want to talk about what attacking a mall is doing to Americans right now, because Dr. Bart, you obviously, we've talked about this a lot. You know, they've talked about soft targets like malls, and we've been talking about it since 9/11. You know, if and when it will happen. What does this Kenyan mall attack do to the American psyche right now?
Well, I think it makes us all more anxious, of course, but I think it makes the whole world more anxious. And I look at it as, from the psychologist's point of view, as what kind of united front is going to happen as a result of this? Because terror is not just our business anymore. It's a worldwide situation, as just highlighted here. So what is the world going to do in a collective way to deal with this? What types of actions are going to have to take place going forward? Because this is about power and control. That's what this terrorist group wants. So if that's what they're looking for, there has to be a worldwide approach, not just the United States approach, in solving this problem.
Well, I want to talk about what we do here in this country. Obviously, we've seen some armed police officers going into schools right now, and we do have some in malls. But do we start arming malls and having pat downs when you go into malls? Dee Dee?
I don't know about the pat downs, but I think more law and order is good. I mean, I think that's why New York has done so well, because they've got a great police force. They've done a nice job. I think stop and frisk is good, actually. And when you have strict law and order, you know it's not a soft target. People know New York is not a soft target. I mean, look, they've tried to attack us how many times, and they failed because we have a great force and we know what we're doing. However, a mall, and then they're there for 4 days attacking and maiming, and I mean, how does that happen? How does it continue?
It was amazing that it lasted for 4
Oh, my
days.
goodness.
I
A
can't believe
soft
that.
target that maybe should become a hard target.
Absolutely.
It should become harder to do this, yeah.
That's why you were shaking your head there for a
I
minute.
would look at this a bit differently. I don't think it has that much to do with local enforcement or law and order. The difference in Africa and the Middle East is these are very fragile states. They're weak states. The state is in fact an externally imposed structure. And anyone who's had any dealings knows that they're weak bureaucracies, they're overlapping police and military and intelligence forces. The intelligence force is very weak, actually.
There's a big problem with this.
Big problem. And that's not something, using this particular attitude or that particular attitude is going to change. Perhaps an international response is called for. I'm not sure what that means, though.
I'm not sure either, but Somalia is like a failed state. So if we have a failure of a whole, there's a lot of failed states. So what do we do as a united front, not just Americans, but what do we do to handle this problem? That's what this terrorist attack shows.
I was involved in some negotiations for anti-rape actions in the Congo. If you look around the Congo, there are 9 failed states. This is so massive.
It is massive, but I want to keep focusing on Al-Shabaab right now. What their agenda is, how big are they?
Well, in the reports, Mia, actually were talking about how they feel like this had been planned out a long time, like maybe they were even workers in the mall, or people actually took over stores. So, if this had been going on for a while, having the weak intelligence is a big problem. And also, looking for the soft targets and trying to be, a little bit more vigilant is important, especially when you know that you have enemies in Somalia wanting to attack. They've said it, and they're claiming it now. So we have, that is a problem. It's good. I think the United States FBI and others are over. They are now trying to put together, what happened and try to help with forensics and so forth.
And obviously, a lot of the countries are coming together.
Yes.
Also, there's countries from all over there. Now, some say this terror attack, as we were talking about the malls as well, brutally illustrates that places like malls and subways could be the next war zones for the future. You agree, disagree? Dee Dee?
Well, obviously it happened, and they were there for 4 days, so it's a problem. Thank goodness, in our country, we've got much better security, and it is weak there. These countries, Kenya was susceptible. However, they still have to be ready. They still have to be vigilant, especially that. And remember, too, there was an American family there. There's a woman there with 5 kids, and, she was saved. So, we were lucky. So there is definitely an American interest in the situation.
And certainly don't remember the terror group, but also remember the heroes. There were quite a few heroes that came forward as well.
Always.
But it's so sad that the British citizen was also named today as well. But again, moving forward, okay, for Kenya, this is obviously, we've just seen the country destabilized. We saw Egypt destabilized, rather, and we saw that their tourism has just dropped so dramatically. So that right now the country itself is losing. How does Kenya bounce back now?
God, that's a very good question. I know this much. Before the Iraqi war, I wound up going to Petra, the wonderful rock formation in Jordan, which is a World Historical Site. People probably know it from Indiana Jones. There were at that time, this was about a month before the war, there were 20 people there. Usually there'd be thousands. So the effect of this on the economy of Kenya is monstrous. I mean, we haven't even started to see that yet.
And we saw Egypt, I mean, they're
Egypt.
losing millions, not millions, billions of dollars now, and it's really starting to affect...
Which they can't afford.
Well,
No,
it
they
seems like
cannot.
terrorism has escalated, and it's escalated worldwide, so that's why we do need to come together. All nations come together to try to fight terrorism, because
We do, and
it's
I
really
I
gotten to
wonder,
be a fever pitch.
To your point, I wonder, do we need to look at these malls more like football stadiums, where you go in and you're not frisked, but you actually have to go
Well,
through
no, I said that before, Dr. Bartlett.
I think that's something that we need to think about, not only here, but the world needs to think about it in a global way, so that, we have a different mindset in terms of how we
Well, I
protect
think we
these
have that
areas.
Metal
mindset.
detectors, I mean, is that where we go when it comes to going into a mall now? Are we going to see metal detectors?
See, to me, the way to begin this is when we talk about the world coming together. I think the effective force is going to be for each of these areas the regional associations. There's going to be a lot of controversy over whether you like the African Union or you don't like the African Union. Without the African Union, it's hopeless.
Well, we want to go turn to our Skype guest, Seth Weinberger. He is in Washington, D.C. He's from Washington University, and thanks for joining us. We are talking about Al-Shabaab right now, and we want to get a better idea of how big they are and where they are. Can you give us some insights onto that?
Yeah, well, they are largely in Somalia. This is one of their, it's not their first attack outside of Somalia, but, excuse me? I'm sorry. They're in Somalia, they're attacked a few times outside of Somalia, and they are, we don't know exactly how large they are, but they are, obviously becoming a little bit more active, and particularly more active outside Somalia after the intervention by the various regional neighbors of Somalia pushed them out and pushed them really out of both Mogadishu and then out of Somalia more broadly.
Well, we were talking prior to you joining us, Dr. Weinberger, we were talking about how the intelligence officials, not only here in the U.S., but worldwide, seem to have missed this. Why was that? And that's very disturbing.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is basically if people want to shoot up a soft target like a mall, it's pretty difficult to find intelligence on that. That doesn't take a lot of sophisticated weapon acquisition. It doesn't take a lot of sophisticated planning. And I think that so there's the first thing, is that just these kinds of attacks aren't all that easy. They don't pop up on the radar screen like a major attack that takes months or years of planning, like September 11th or things like that.
This took 1 year to plan.
Yeah, but that's more in terms of organizing individuals rather than at a group level, I would think. And we don't know details yet, obviously. But I would think that's because that's more of a coordination of individuals rather than a plan that spans different countries, that involves different kinds of security. My understanding is that the mall, and I heard the conversation before about whether or not we need to secure malls, the mall was essentially unsecured, and so while they did stash weapons, it appears, inside, you still have a plan that is relatively low on the radar screen, and that probably doesn't involve a lot of high-level communications between high-level Al-Qaeda members and Shabaab members. We'll see whether or not there was some kind of coordination between the Shabaab and Al-Qaeda on this. My guess is probably not, but it's really too early to tell that for sure right now.
Well, obviously, a lot of inspectors are down in Kenya right now. Quick question before we wrap this up. We want to ask you, do you think that we will ever see metal detectors as you go into malls here in the U.S.?
Ever? Well, ever's a long time. My sense is that these kind of attacks, I mean, it's a question we've been asking for a while. Why haven't terrorist organizations been doing these sorts of things in the United States, like they have in Israel, like they have in other countries? And there's a lot of different opinions as to why this really hasn't happened yet, especially given that we have non-terrorist murderers, people who go on rampages who do these things. So, will we ever have them? I would probably think yes. I wouldn't necessarily want to give a time frame on it. My guess is it would probably happen after the first terrorist attack in a mall here. The United States tends to be more reactive than a proactive country when it comes to counterterrorism actions. So,
well, we certainly hope we won't be seeing that anytime soon.
Yeah, and we've been lucky so far. So in that we haven't had one. So let's.
But I do agree. I think a lot of people have been saying, are surprised that nothing like that has happened since 2000.